You've probably tried colouring books as a child. Maybe you've even tried colouring books as an adult. But have you ever tried colouring like this? Today I want to explore the different ways that mixed media can take a colouring page from simple line work to a captivating piece of art. I want to try different techniques, see how far I can push a simple colouring page, and by the end, create some of the most interesting colouring pages I've ever created. Since I started colouring as an adult, I've always tried to stretch what colouring means and approach each project as a new art piece, not just a simple colouring page. I've used markers, pencils, watercolours, paint, pastels, inks, and sometimes all at once. But now I'm ready to take it a step further again and try colouring in ways that I've never seen before. For this first project, I've chosen some colouring pages and a colour palette, and I'm planning to just get creative and colour these recklessly with every supply I can think of. It looks like a mess now, but trust me, this will all come together soon. I've been dabbling in mixed media the past 5 weeks, and it's given me an opportunity to try hundreds of new supplies and techniques that I'd never even heard about before. And I've been curious, can I use these to colour? Colouring books are such a great way to create art and rediscover your creative self, even if you haven't picked up a pencil since being a kid. It's easier than starting from a blank canvas, and anybody can have a go and create something to be proud of. Mixed media is similar. It's like the perfect gateway art to everything else. Anyone can have a go, try new techniques, and create something artistic. And as you start using your creativity, each project gets more and more interesting. Mistakes turn into new discoveries, and you start to discover a fearless creativity inside you that you've never felt before. And when you start being fearlessly creative, nothing can stop you. Did I just ruin everything? This was so much quicker than colouring with markers and pencils, but obviously it doesn't look very good yet. My plan is to cut this out from here and rebuild all of these flowers into a new colouring page collage. I've lost... Where are my scissors? I didn't think about how I was going to cut all these out. If I cut too close to the edge, it's going to be a huge pain to cut out the leaves and the small twigs. So instead, I'm leaving a white edge and leaning into the imperfections, even at this step. There's a lot to cut out, and I feel like I'm back in art class at school, but I'm having fun. So as I was laying these pieces out, I realized that these would actually look amazing in one of the later projects that I have planned for this video. So I'm actually going to put this one on hold. We're going to come back to it. I have some really cool ideas to make this even more interesting. So I want to create a different kind of collage this time. I'm leaning very heavily into the vintage style because I have so many bits and pieces that I've bought, that have been given to me, and that I've collected from my own just old stash of things that we'd normally throw away. And instead of cutting up the colouring page this time, I want to use the colouring page as it is in a whole page, and I want to use these as my colouring media. So I've chosen this colouring page from my upcoming colouring book, Vibrant Wilds. And I've decided to make this one bigger, so I've actually printed it out as an A3 size, and I'm hoping that somehow I can get this on a canvas, but I haven't really worked out how I'm going to do that. My initial idea is that I could just glue down or Mod Podge down the piece of paper onto the canvas. My concern with that is that I don't know if the paper is going to then hold me back with the rest of the stuff I'm doing. I don't know if it's going to warp, or whether I'm better to work out how to actually do some kind of transfer to get my colouring page on the canvas before I keep going. I don't know enough about how paper reacts to different media to actually make a proper decision here. I don't really know what I'm getting into. I'm a bit nervous about this one. I think the best idea here is actually to do a practice run of this paper on canvas approach. All right, so I've got some test canvases that I can try first. I can always paint over these later if it doesn't work. And I've printed the colouring page, but I accidentally printed it double-sided. I'm not sure if that matters. I mean, since I ended up with the artwork on the back, I might as well use that on this canvas to test, so that if it does work, I have another picture. I mean, so far, so good. Except for the brown paint that I'm now rubbing all over this. Oh, okay. The paper's starting to crinkle. Doesn't matter though. I mean, I feel like that worked. The next question is, can I do like some kind of watercolor wash over this without now buckling the paper? I'm hoping that maybe even adding a layer of clear gesso first might, or maybe watercolor ground. I think I have some of that. I'm hoping that with the canvas underneath and the paper attached as firmly as it is, that it won't buckle. I've never done this before, so we're gonna find out together. So I'm doing transparent acrylic gesso on this side, and I'm doing transparent watercolor ground on this side. Whoa, no, ah! That wasn't supposed to happen. Oh dear. Oh, that's so much. Things going perfectly to plan. Okay, that is not what I was planning, and that is a lot of watercolor ground wasted. Ooh. So we're really gonna find out if it works. Oh no, that's so much. I need to get some of this off. So this actually worked really well. Even the parts where the page is buckled or there's like bits that tore off, it's kind of just added a bit more character. So I'm feeling pretty confident about this. This larger page was printed with an inkjet printer, not laser. So I've got some workable fixative that I'm going to spray over this in the hope that it will stop the ink from running so that I can do this whole thing again. So now with my watercolor wash done, I'm kind of just getting a bit experimental and trying different things, using a bit of mixed media here, still with the watercolor for now, but then I'm going to move into some other things to just try and create a bit more interesting texture in this background area before I start doing layers. One of the things I'm really enjoying about mixed media is that it's starting to teach me how to just free myself up to just be creative without necessarily worrying about where it's going or how it's going to turn out. It's really teaching me to trust the process, but in a very different way to what I've done in the past, where I don't actually have a plan for the end picture. I kind of know where I want this to go, but mostly I'm just making it up as I'm going along, and that makes it more fun for me. So this background is actually turning out even better than I pictured, and I'm really excited now for this next step, which is probably the step that makes me a little bit more anxious, but how this has gone so far is actually giving me a lot more confidence that the end result of this is going to look really cool. The plan now is collage. It's actually going to be really hard to cut these out. But actually, if I print a second copy of this picture in the exact same size, I can use it as a little bit of a stencil. And hopefully by putting that on top of the pieces that I'm wanting to cut out, I can cut out the top layer. It will at the same time cut out the layer underneath, and we will get the result we are hoping for. My plan here is to use these different vintage backgrounds, but to bring them all together with the colors from my color palette. So first, I want to create some pages with dark browns that I can use to color the hair. There's no specific process here. I'm just trying all different supplies, and some are working well, others not so much. I still want to be able to see the vintage papers underneath, so I'm mostly using light washes or small details with stencils to add the color without overpowering everything. I've quickly realized that positioning these directly on the canvas either means I'll need to glue every piece as soon as it's cut, or I'll be far more careful than is realistically possible. So instead, I've printed another copy of this page as a reference to keep my pieces in the right place before I glue them down. Otherwise, I'll find myself with a crazy puzzle to solve when it comes time to attach them. But actually, leaving all of these out is still a bad idea when I have kids and a cat, so I'm going to stick them down in sections as I go. I'm actually really happy with how this is turning out, but I've also become very aware of just how long this is going to take. I've decided not to colour these vintage papers for her face. Some of these pages are over 100 years old, so I want to showcase them as much as possible in the final project. Don't worry, there's nothing precious destroyed here. It's mostly old notepads and paper clippings that would have been thrown out if I hadn't salvaged them for this art. And I love that I get to give them a new life. Well, they do say that every picture has an ugly stage. I feel like we're right there. She's lost her nose. That's a little awkward. I hadn't planned to do anything extra here, but it's becoming clear that I need to add some shading to give her some life. And a nose. Coloured pencils are perfect for this. I'm using them to add some shading in her hair, colour any pieces that stand out too much, and add some subtle shading around her face. Other than her creepy eyeliner, which we'll fix in a moment, this subtle shading is helping so much. I do want to add a splash of colour to this, and this colour palette has a beautiful teal that I think is perfect. I mean, teal is always perfect. I'm using watercolours, inks, stencils, markers, acrylic paints, stamps, and these cool sprays from Lindy's gang. And I'm making a huge mess, but also having a lot of fun. At first I wasn't sure if I wanted to use the teal as the leaves because it's similar to a green, or use them for the flowers. I have decided on the flowers because these are a more important feature on the page, and I didn't want to bring in another colour if I could help it. For something that went through quite the ugly phase early on, I'm really happy now with how this is coming out. This is possibly one of the best things I think I've ever made. I know I've probably said that on a few videos recently, but it's been true each time. I do want to get some more details done on this, but while this is drying, let's have a play with a gel plate. What's a gel plate, you ask? Only the coolest mixed media tool that I have ever seen. So I've got paints, I've got markers, I have some colouring pages, and I have my jelly plates, and my brayers, and some water, and some paint. You get the point. So first I just want to experiment for a while, get the hang of the jelly plate, because I'm still very, very new to this, and I also want to show you how cool this is. This feels so cool. The jelly plate is something you can use to make patterns, prints, abstract art, or even create transfers from magazines. All right, time to see if this worked. I mean, It's not quite what I was picturing, but I mean, it's interesting. It uses a lot less paint than you think. Whoa, that was a lot of paint. There's no way that's gonna work. I have a terrible habit of putting way too much paint on this. Did I put way too much paint again? I always end up putting too much on, so I do recommend having some extra pieces of paper nearby as well, so that as you work, you can be creating multiple other backgrounds and things that you can use in collages later. I've used this already to make a magazine transfer that I'll be showing you more of in my next video, and it works particularly well for black and white images that have a lot of contrast. So in theory, a coloring page should be perfect for this, because it's also a black and white page with a lot of contrast. That did not work as well as I needed it to. Okay, we have a very faint transfer, so there's gotta be a way to make this work. So I will spare you the commentary from the next few hours that I spent trying to transfer my coloring pages. How these transfers work is that the page absorbs all the paint from the jelly plate except in the dark areas where there's ink. So the paint from the darkest areas remains on the jelly plate and the lighter areas are removed, creating a really cool transfer. That is how it's supposed to work. So my issue is related somehow to the ink on my page. I tried wetting the page after seeing a suggestion online. Well, that was even worse than the last one. I tried photocopying my pages with the density turned up as high as possible. I tried both the color and the black and white settings. I even tried using paint markers and Sharpies instead of acrylic paint. What? The paint vanished. I don't know what just happened. I've lost all confidence in my ability to pull this off at this point. Even other coloring pages just weren't working. So I think the issue is that my laserjet printer is working, but the lines of my coloring page are so thin that there's nowhere for it to actually absorb any paint. Finally, I tried feeding my paper through the printer multiple times, reprinting the same image over itself on the page. Oh, here it goes. It worked, it finally worked. For a second there, I thought that the image hadn't transferred, but this isn't the transfer to the plate, this is the transfer to the paper, and it worked perfectly. I've tried printing some other coloring pages, and this time I did have a lot of trouble getting the print to line up when I printed on it the second and third time. I'm not entirely sure why. It's the same printer, same settings, but we do have something close in the end that I think we can possibly work with. So that coat maybe came out a little bit thinner than I thought. I don't know how it's going to look at the end, but it could end up looking even cooler. I thought this page would look good with an autumn palette and white lines. So I'm adding my colors with a brush and I'm adding some textures too. And I'm hoping that my lines underneath will show up on the final page. At this step, I can take as long as I need in painting because it doesn't matter if this dries. In fact, it's better to dry as long as the final layer is wet so that it can attach to all the lower layers of paint. I think. Why did that fail? I'm going to put this one down to cheap paint. Oh, that's what it was supposed to look like the first time. Well, sort of. So maybe white wasn't the best choice, but we did get a transfer. I'm gonna try this again, but this time I'm gonna use a much darker color ink to see if the transfer shows up better. I'm learning a lot about how this works through experimenting, and even though I've had a lot of failures, I'm finding this process fascinating. Every time you lift the paper, you just don't really know what you're gonna find on the other side. Yes, finally, we have a really good result. It's like reverse coloring, but in a different way. You color the front layers first and then everything behind them. It's like looking at the back of a tapestry for the whole process and then turning it around at the end to see what the front looks like. You can plan it to a point, but there are always unknown elements or the risk that it won't pull the way you want. And this is part of why it's so exciting. It takes the pressure off being perfect because so much of the process is out of your control. And that's what I'm enjoying about this whole mixed media experience. The chance to let go of being perfect and just enjoy making art. So I've let this dry for a little while so that everything hopefully sticks together. I have spent a lot of time on this for it not to work. All it needs now is a final wet layer of paint to transfer everything from the plate to the page. I was so scared I wasn't gonna have enough paint that I put way too much paint again. It's down before it dries. And now we say a little prayer.
Wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off.
Oh. I don't think it worked. I think I had too much white paint. This is like the most stressful step of anything that I've ever done, but it's also like exciting because I don't know what this looks like and I've spent ages on it. And I've been intentional, it's not like completely random, but yet I still don't know what it's gonna look like at all. I might hate it. There's every possibility that I'm not gonna like the end result if it even works in the first place. No such thing as ugly art, right? That's not true. It's a lot of ugly art. But it's still art. Oh, it's looking cool. How is that? Oh, that came out cool. I don't know. It's kind of like one of those, is it so bad that we like it anyway kind of pieces. Well, it's maybe not the most effective, fast, accurate, or aesthetically pleasing way to colour, but it was fun. Back to my vintage girl for some final details. I'm really happy with this final piece, and I will be hanging this one on my wall. You wouldn't even know that this started with a colouring page, and I think I will be trying this again one day. But I'm running out of time, and I've got one more project to complete. So coming back to my first page, I have this idea in mind, and I'm not entirely sure how it's going to come together. But let me show you the plan. I've got this colouring page that I want to use as a base for the overall design, but instead of using these flowers here, I'm going to use the flowers that I've already created. But to make this more interesting, I have got here from Sizzix some 3D foam tape, which will hopefully give it a little bit more dimension. On top of that, I want to get even more creative, and I spoke to the team from Pear Blossom Press who have made these card making lights. These lights are designed for greeting cards and they are super flat, and so I'm hoping that we can use that to our advantage and actually build them into our page. That is so thin. It's like lighter and thinner than a coin. Oh, look at that! They twinkle. That is so compact. Look at that. It's tiny. So compact. This is it. So I want to light up my lantern, and that means I need glass. So I don't have glass, but for ages I've been wanting to try this clear mixed media paper. I mean, I don't even know if we can really call it paper. And apparently this can take any kind of mixed media and wet media and pencils and markers, and hopefully bringing all of this together will help me to create something completely different to anything I've ever made before. I think I've said that a few times already in this video, but that really is what most of this video has been. To really make this effect work, I want to diffuse this light, and so I've decided to keep the backing paper on and to try and add some color with a green ink pad. And then we're using our antique bronze mica spray on top of the green but also a little bit extra on this top layer. And that seems to have created a really cool effect, with just enough transparency for the lights to still work underneath. So while they're drying, I now want to decorate the actual lanterns themselves. I really liked how the different colors that I was testing with ended up blending together really well, and they actually go really well with the color palette. So I'm going to use this and I'm going to recreate this on the final lanterns. One of the things I'm loving about mixed media is that even the scrap paper, the drop sheets, all the tests can all be used later for collage paper for something else. Don't shake them when they're open. It's interesting this is actually repelling the lines on the coloring page, but that works out perfect because it means that now we can still see the lines even with this over the top. I thought it was just going to cover it all up and that I'd have to retrace it. So, unexpected win. Now it's time to cut everything out and help these lanterns stand out from the rest of the page with some layers of cardboard underneath. Speaking on the background, I'm using a green pan pastel on black paper to create a faded light. I've used fixative spray to seal it and then added some extra mica spray in the middle where the light will be. With all my pieces ready, now it's just a process of arranging everything and sticking it down. This 3D tape is helping me to make the flowers stand out from the background and is creating more layers in this piece, along with the cardboard that I used on the back of the lantern. I'm planning to hide my lights under the lantern in the center, with the wires hiding behind the back of the page so I can use one of these flowers in the bottom corner as a button. This is all coming together even better than I expected when I first started this project. The colors, the lights, the mixed media, it has all worked, and it's helped me to create something completely new from another simple coloring page. Spent ages doing that pan pastel background and you can barely see it. My page is done. And it lights up! Is that cool? Don't break it.
I like it. And also it's good because there's flowers.
The 5-year-old has approved.
Maybe when that gets home,
Do you hear that? Maybe when Zach gets home, a 9-year-old can approve. This isn't all the mixed media that I've been doing. I have so much more to show you in my next video. Please subscribe now so you don't miss that one, and let me know which project was your favorite.